Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. Today we have Herb Rubenstein, the Vice President and General Counsel at Golf Pro Delivered. So, Herb, thank you for being on today. I really appreciate it. And why don't you tell me a little bit about your background and your role within Golf Pro Delivered?
Well, I became a PGA golf pro when I was 67 years old, and I'm 72 years old now. And I hadn't played for a while, so you need to pass that player's ability test. And I passed it. First time out, we got rained out, and 2 weeks later, I passed it on literally my first official score. And I was very fortunate playing against a lot of 22-year-olds. And in that process of preparing, because I hadn't played golf for 3 years, I moved to New York when I was about 62. And so I wanted to get and I love golf simulators. I love golf technology. So living in Brooklyn, where there's not much great golf,
Mhm.
I started looking around for a golf simulator. And so I find a place and they say it's $400 a month and you get an hour a day and you get 2 lessons a month. And I only wanted it for 3 months. So I said, no. The guy looked at me like, what do you mean, no? I said, $700 a month. I get 4 lessons. And by the way, what time do you open? He said, well, what does that matter? We're a gym. We open at 4:30 in the morning. I said, perfect. I don't get 1 hour a day. I get here at 5 or 6 in the morning because I have to drive an hour to be here from Brooklyn to Long Island. And so I told him, I said, I will hit balls for as many hours as I can until somebody else comes and wants this simulator stall. And he said, Mr. Rubenstein, we don't have anybody to turn on a simulator at 4:30 or 5 o'clock or 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, sir, I know how to turn on a simulator. And if I break it, I'll buy you a new one. And so anyway, that's how I got involved because a man who was going to form Golf Pro Delivered was my instructor. And when I take a lesson, I write down notes. I would take a lesson from Michael Breed once a year. And I like Michael a lot. He went to a college not far from where I went. And I went to Washington Lee in Virginia. And he went to a school right in the area. And I took notes when he gave me a lesson, 2 hour lesson. Gave me a good price always. And it was about 5,000 words. And so he and his people called me up and said, never seen anything like that. So you need to know how you learn. And I
Right.
don't learn as well from listening as I learn from writing things down. So even today, any golf lesson I take, I write down notes. I don't know what I'll ever put them together in a book form, but I've written 3 books. First book I wrote was on how to grow businesses and nonprofits. And I don't really do much consulting anymore. I'm 72 years old. So I'm telling you to go to my website, not because I'm trying to sell you something. I'm telling you to go there because there's 250 videos, there are 250 articles, and the book, Breakthrough Incorporated, High Growth Strategies for Entrepreneurial Organization, is there online. Now, we put it online. My publisher, Financial Times, didn't put it online, but I bought back the rights and you can word search it. So, one of the things that I told this new company as it was getting started, Golf Pro Delivered, was I'd like to invest right in the beginning. And then I realized they had a PGA Pro. And I said, wow, I can work for you, right? For 18 months. You don't even have to pay me. And I can meet the PGA requirement. And I did that. So it helped me become a PGA Pro. I own 10% of the company. And general counsel, that was my job. They had 2 investors who didn't quite do all the things they said they would do. And I said, breach a contract, give them 100 cents on the dollar back for their investment. So they were bought out. I was able to buy out their shares. And Golf Pro Delivered is a golf simulator company. And we really almost had 2 ideas. And eventually, when you have 2 ideas for your business, on a good day, one of them has to win out. First idea, the inflatable golf simulator.
Mhm.
That means I can set it up as long as I can plug it in. I can set it up anywhere. On the 19th hole, I can set it up at your pro shop. I can set it up anywhere. And if you're a pro that has left a club and you're in between clubs and you've got people, you can set it up in a gym. So that was, we got two patents on that. Cost us a lot of money. But the other idea was they were going to build simulators, meaning the hardware, the software, we buy that off the shelf, but we test all of them.
Gotcha.
But, we put up the sheetrock, we put up the pads in the corners that we make ourselves, perfectly safe. And if we do it at a country club, which we do often, we help write the business plan for the golf simulator. How are you going to charge? What's your revenue going to be? What are your costs? How does it help food and beverage? How does it help literally pace of play? And pace
Right.
of play we think of as, oh, 4 hours and 15 minutes, 4 hours and 30 minutes. Well, at the Inn at Perry Cabin, Pete Dye's last ever renovation, he extended the par 4 18th hole by a long way and wiped out the driving range. And so what do? They have six, no, they have eight beautiful simulators. So you get a half an hour in the simulator before you tee off.
There we go.
And, I would negotiate, say I want a half an hour. I mean, if I'm Tom Watson, which I'm not, I want a half an hour in that simulator after my round. Because what most golfers don't understand is the practice after the round is just as
Hmm.
important as the practice before the round. So I know we're here today not to talk about me and not so much about golf, but about how to grow a business or a nonprofit organization. And because both of them, even if they call it a not for profit, it's also a not for loss.
Right.
So I hope all golfers here, any business you have to have relationships with nonprofits. And one way I did that was I was chairman of the Boys and Girls Club, the JELLEF, JELLEFF, Boys and Girls Club in Washington, D.C. And today, I might be spearheading an effort by the PGA to bring the Boys and Girls Club into the golf world. Now,
There we go.
it sounds kind of novel to you being young, and it sounded novel to me at 71 years old when I figured this out. But from 2010 to about 2015, the PGA had a relationship with the Boys and Girls Club, a big one,
Really?
a big one. And I'm now getting all those papers. So, one of the big lessons of any business you're in is know the history of your business, of who did what made your technological and other advances, and know how you can learn from that history. I mean, I only learned about this Boys and Girls Club relationship months after I've been telling PGA that there are 95 organizations that can help grow the game of golf, and I have a list. And my list is there are probably 5,000 organizations that can grow the game of golf. So I'm a big outward facing person, and you have to wear two hats. You got to be outward facing into the community, into the golf world, and so I go to the PGA trade show most years. I go to the Masters most years. And that's just me being out there. And so, but you also have to be inward facing. You've got to treat your employees well. In my first book, Breakthrough Inc., I said that employees are volunteers. Treat them well. And when
Hmm.
somebody says, well, we only have a volunteer organization or a volunteer board, I tell them that's actually not a very good distinction. You either have a professional, a group of professionals, or a group of people who are not professional, and try to stick around people who are professional.
Right. Listen, her, the more I hear you talk, the more and more I realize we've got the guy for the job here to talk about growing a business and being an entrepreneur and has the expertise. So I appreciate you being here again. I guess the next question to ask you is what are some major trends you're seeing in the golf industry that's affecting Golf Pro Deliver that you've noticed?
Well, let's look at so any trend, and I had the good fortune of helping start the Association of Professional Futurists. And there are even graduate degrees in future studies. So you're asking about trends, which is really asking about the future. And in order to try to figure out what's a trend, and there's a difference between a trend and a blip. A trend is a result of somebody trying to solve a problem. So in golf, what are the problems? Well, number one, it's not 24 by 7, 365 days a year.
Right.
Weather, seasonal. Okay, I want to fix seasonality. In fact, I might want to do something that's what we call counter cyclical. When your golf course is closed, I want my golf business booming.
Hmm.
How do I do that? Simulators, indoor golf,
Right.
indoor training. So I see that. Number two, I was just at David Tom's 265 golf training facility in Shreveport, Louisiana. He shot 265 in the U.S. Open, and David Tom's a great golfer, but I have fun saying he must never have gotten over that. And by the way, I was lucky in hitting an 8 iron that lipped out 2 days ago at Macklemore's new course in the pretty heavy rain and a 30-mile-an-hour wind, and it was 135 yards, sitting on the side of a bunker in a little bit of rough. And I had to play it 30 yards to the right, lined it up with the right side of the green, pins back left. It lands just about 2 or 3 inches in the front right, rolls all the way up, and then the wind starts taking it. And it lips out, goes 15 feet past, but I
Oh
might
man.
I might never get over that shot. So, constraints. A golf course, we are professional athletes. And what that means is you have to have a certain level of fitness to play at your optimum level. And sure, there used to be people that didn't look fit. Lee Trevino didn't look fit, but he was stronger than you think. Really strong hands.
Hmm.
And so you want a gym. What are your complementary? If I'm selling hot dogs, don't you think I should sell hot dog buns? If I'm selling Nike shoes, so let's look at Nike as an example of how to grow your business. They start out in the running industry because there really, Phil Knight would say, there weren't any good running shoes. And they made them overseas pretty quick. Well, if I'm selling running shoes, I probably should sell shoestrings for my shoes.
Right.
I probably should sell socks. And I probably should sell running shorts. And I probably should sell running shirts. And then where does my business go from there? In addition to hats. So what I was told was Nike, whenever it went into a different sport, Star always started with the shoes and worked its way up. And that's called a strategy, a long-term strategy. So if you're going to have a business, first of all, everybody says you have to have a vision. That's right. However, you need a long-term goal. Where is this vision? Where's this company going to be in 10 years, 9 years, 8 years, 7 years, and go all the way back to the end of the first year? And that may sound like overkill, but it ought to take you about 3 minutes to set some revenue goals, to set maybe some locational goals if you're trying to grow it locationally. And franchise models are really hard.
Hmm.
I mean, Starbucks is not even a franchise. And so they're company-owned stores. It costs a lot of money with lawyers, but with AI and other ways now, it's going to cost less money. But think about franchise. Don't even think about franchising until you've got 3 or 4 or 5 locations. And you've got the plans for every one of them. You've got the blueprint. You know exactly the cost. You know your margins, and you know what your revenues per employee should be, or how much sales per customer you're getting. So invest in a management information system that tells you what in the heck is going on
Hmm.
in your company. And so while just like in golf, when I was standing over that 8 iron, I'm going to hit it low. I've got wind blowing like crazy. My target was the front right side of the green. My last look was not at the pin. The pin was my goal, but it was not my target. And so I hit my target and played a couple of days in Lookout Mountain in that area. And I hadn't played much lately. My golf course, if I turn this camera around, you would see a lot of Caterpillar machines. My golf course is being torn up because 10 years ago I wrote a white paper, told a particular university right here. I said, we got this country club, and I didn't even live here then. You have to turn it into an NCAA Division III championship course. 10 years later now, the university's committed $30 million. And so I'm looking at my backyard being torn up with $30 million, and I say to my great university, Washington Lee, thank you very much. And they do have the number one Division III player in the country who
There
I
we
got
go.
who I got an NIL for. And I want everybody in golf to understand what name, image, and likeness is. I'm not going to explain it very much here. Golfers can get equipment free, they can get money free if they're in college. And when I was in high school, our tennis team won the state championship, and our golf team, well, we weren't so good. But the tennis team got free tennis rackets, free tennis balls, free tennis clothing. And guess what? Guess what? If I'd accepted free equipment, free golf shoes, free golf balls, I would have been declared a pro and not able to play in amateur golf.
Hmm.
So I never really understood that crazy distinction between pro and amateur, and I'm glad we've obliterated it. So NIL, if you're a golf pro, if you're in the business, you get to know what companies are giving out NILs. These young people, smart, work hard, have integrity. Companies would be really smart to pay them something, to give them some equipment, to do something for them and have their name, image, and likeness. Have them help you with sales, have them help you do events. Maybe they can do a clinic one day. Maybe they can do an exhibition one day for you. But these young people, I tell people I spend a lot of time on university campuses, and I just spent 4 days with the class of 1974. So we graduated 51 years ago. We're all out there playing golf. And they said, what do you think about the students at Washington Lee today? And I said, they are 51 years smarter than we are. And so I mean that. So understand the difference between a target and a goal. And everybody who works in the company has to really get behind and share what that goal
Hmm.
is. And if they can't, give them the opportunity to work somewhere else. Now,
Right.
isn't that an interesting way to say it differently from firing them? Give them an opportunity to work somewhere else. You're giving them an opportunity to work at your place for that limited period of time when you are all on the same page. And you've got to have a plan. And so when I say write a 10-year business plan and write part of it for each year, the first year's business plan's pretty complicated. It's about what you're going to do. But every year after that, the length of your business plan might be cut in half. So for the eighth year, it might be one paragraph. For the ninth year, it might be two sentences. And for the 10th year, it might be sell the business. And so think about it. So think about it, at least in terms of 10 years. If you're going to ever want to sell your business, it's a 3-year process. And so, yeah, you might get lucky. Somebody wants to buy your business and you've got it all there and you can close in 6 months or something. But you need to make sure that you know what is the best thing your business is doing. And so when I give golf lessons, I ask people, what's the best part of your game? And if they don't know, I tell them, I don't think you're ready for a lesson. Everybody wants
Right.
to tell me what's wrong with their game. I can figure out what's wrong with their game in 2 seconds, 2 hours, but I can't figure out what they do best because that's really pretty well hidden. And so I got lucky one day. I made a 60-yard wedge shot. I knocked a couple of 25, 30-yard chips in the leather. And these people say, "Oh, yeah, you're the guy with that great short game." Well, yeah, I had a great short game that day. It, it, it lasts about as long as, eggs in the refrigerator or eggs not in the refrigerator. So the point is, you have to stand out. We are in a competitive environment, whether it's a business or a nonprofit. And when we stand out, so how does your company stand out?
Right.
And think about capitalism. It's called competition. What is the goal of everyone who is a capitalist? Actually, the goal is to become a monopolist. There's only one Picasso. There's only one Rembrandt. And there's only one Jack Nicklaus. There's only one Arnold Palmer and Lee Trevino. And so you've got to be able to present the identity of your company or your nonprofit. And I treat companies and nonprofits as the same. So what's that identity? And, companies, what's your look? What's your feel? What's your logo? Or if you're trying to improve sales in a golf shop, what are your 10 logos? That tree that everybody hates on number 10, that's a logo. And that green right next to the water, that's your logo. But now you're already focused on two hazards, two threats. So show somebody something beautiful in your golf course. And so don't cheat on marketing. And what a lot of people don't know, they think of marketing as advertising. Okay, that's an interesting idea, but there's a lot of marketing that goes on inside your facility. You don't ever plan to sell that beautiful towel up there, and it might even be framed, but you have to make people feel good when they're dealing with your business. And so, from your perspective, you have to know why your business is the way it is. You have to know why your customer is buying from you. You have to know why you're implementing this strategy and not that other strategy. So let's talk about the golf pro shop. I think the worst thing about most golf pro shops is the people who work in them are not properly trained. So how would I train
Right.
them? How would I train them? First thing I train them in is here are all the brands we carry. And I'd put this in writing. And here's how each one is different. Here's the best of this brand. Here's the best of that brand. And so I might buy a FootJoy shirt. So I was telling the guy, I need something warm today. And he goes, this is the warmest shirt we have in the store. Well, you got to be trained pretty well and know pretty well that that's the warmest, because he saw what I was wearing. And I felt it. It felt kind of normal, but it actually had two layers. And I said, great, I'll buy it. And he didn't say, what size do you wear? He ought to be able to see that, or she ought to be able to see that. He said, this runs long, you'll take a medium. I grab a medium, put it on. I said, cut the tag off. Let's go. And so training your people and as people buy by brand, but you're changing brands all the time. In almost every business, you're changing your supply chain.
Hmm.
Everybody has to know why you've added a new vendor. So in Golf Pro Delivered, now that we are building out simulators in country clubs, guess what we can't do? If we're at a great country club, we can't say this is a Golf Pro Delivered simulator, right? They're
Right.
not going to let us co-brand there. However, we could, if we had a little bit of our own software, you could say Golf Pro Delivered. And so we don't create our own software now, and we don't have a license agreement that when we use somebody's software, we can get the opening slide to say Golf
Hmm.
Pro Delivered, but someday we might. And so I think also, this idea of strategies. We now, our main office is in Medford, Long Island. People there live in Long Island. And yes, we go to the Waste Management Open and we have a lot of those sort of pop-up simulators there. And we go to
Awesome.
the Masters and we have simulators that are nets and things in houses. I was once told Mercedes-Benz, don't know if this is accurate, but I was told by the vice president of the PGA, Mercedes-Benz used to rent, this was years ago, 47 houses at the Masters.
Wow.
Why would they do that? Who are they rewarding? Customers first,
Mm.
sales reps second, executives third, future customers maybe first or fourth, right? So understand that. I'm still a big fan of every company has to have a code of ethics. And it's just a written standard. That's what code means. So put it on your website. And one of the things that lawyers have a legal obligation to communicate, and they don't use the word effectively or they don't use the word responsibly, but to have adequate communication with their clients. Just means the client calls you, you got to call them back. So when I started my law firm, I said, how am I going to stand out? I'm just out of law school. Well, I took the DC, Maryland bar exam, so I had three certifications right off the bat that almost nobody had. But I said, here's what we're going to do. Had another lawyer, some staff, undergraduates. I said, we're going to return every phone call every day. Now, I'm already different from 99% of the lawyers, but I'm actually
Right.
different in the customer's eyes from every other lawyer because no other lawyer had ever promised that.
Mhm.
And I fired lawyers, which meant I let lawyers work for another law firm when I found out they weren't returning every phone call every day. I said, okay, well, how far is that going to get you? It's not going to get you very far if you're not a very good lawyer. So how am I going to become a good lawyer? Well, we're going to put a computer in 1985 on every person's desk. I had to
Right.
borrow, I had to borrow a lot of money for that. And the one thing you learn in golf, sometimes lawyers gamble on a lot of things, but I want you to be best at gambling on yourself because that's what golf is. You gamble on yourself. When things aren't going well and you're two down, or they say in the press world, you're four down and two down going into 18, double or nothing. I
Hmm.
might be playing terribly that day, but number 18 is a brand new hole. And I'm a brand new person because I'm fighting for getting my money back. And that's a pretty good fight. So I think that learn how to gamble on yourself, put yourself in a position where you've got to perform, and don't consider that pressure. I think pressure is the worst word in the game of golf. There might be high heart rate. There might be tension in muscles. I get that, but don't call it pressure.
Hmm.
I mean, when you think about pressure, it's somebody squeezing me somehow, and literally something's on my body. There's no pressure in this game. In order to shoot that number 158 in the player's ability test, I had to make a 50 footer on the last hole. And there was no pressure. I'm either going to make it or I'm going to go and play again in 2 weeks in another place. But what that meant was every 50 footer I look at, unless I have a three-shot lead on the last hole, and then I'm lagging that thing 3 feet short. If it gets to the hole, fine. And if it gets 2 feet past the hole, my bad. I was given a golf lesson. I made an 80 footer to show this guy. And he went, how did you do that? And I responded by saying, why didn't you see the possibility? You didn't think this putt was makeable. I said, any shot within your range is makeable. And so you want to make that putt from 50 feet, whether you need to or not. And so that idea, the code of ethics, you may be the only company And we had a published code of ethics. We had a website real early, obviously, but we had a code of ethics. And our clients loved it. They had never seen it. And
Hmm.
lawyers have cheated people in the past. So that's kind of that internal facing stuff. Be consistent and yet be innovative. Because if you're not innovative, I mean, what was it Sam Walton said? He's of Walmart said he spent more time in his competitors' stores than he spent in his own.
Hmm.
Because when you own a drugstore or a grocery store or a clothing store or a technology store or a food store, and by the way, Walmart's all of those, right?
Right, right.
And you own it, what are you doing walking around your own business? You've got other people to do that. You've got
Hmm.
cameras to do that. But only you can learn from your competitors and learn what they're not doing just as much as learn what they're doing. So when I wrote my first book, Breakthrough Incorporated, there was a quote, and I started every chapter with a quote. And the first quote that I really loved was, in the next 5 years, you will learn 80% of the great ideas for your company will come from another industry. So don't just look in the
Hmm.
golf industry. You need to know just kind of how business works in general. And so that was some of the best advice. And I took advice from another industry. Lawyers meet for 1 hour. In the banking business, a standard meeting is 30 minutes. And so I told all our clients in a letter, we only meet for 30 minutes with a client. And if you need two lawyers to meet with you 24 hours a day, we have them. We'll provide that service. And we'll go wherever you are in the world to meet with you. But a standard meeting's 30 minutes. Once we did that, people started showing up on time more. They were more prepared. We made a heck of a lot more money, and they were thankful they could get out of our office.
Hmm.
And also, I stopped telling jokes. So, so the whole point is you need to keep changing because some competitor is looking at you and they're watching the change you did. And when you make a change, you tell the world the change you made. Because if you help improve an industry, you're helping improve your own business. So don't just think of, I got this little shop down the street. And when I say be a monopolist, if you have a little grocery store, the key is that you're the only one that puts bananas on sale every Tuesday.
Right.
And I asked the person who's running a pro shop at Macklemore, what do you do that you don't think other people do? And they say, well, I can't say what other people do, but we run flash sales. Okay, what's your definition of a flash sale? It's just it's on sale for some short time. He goes, well, that's part of it, but we don't announce them. So when people walk in, it's like a bonus, right?
Right.
And I said, well, wait a minute. How do you get people into your place? Because you've got to generate activity. And so when it comes to being a business person, you need to be a leader. And the one kind of leadership nobody teaches, except me, and I've written an article, and you type my name on the internet and you'll see it, or go to my website and hit the search engine. It's called convening power. And Ethan, you use convening power. You have a platform called a podcast. You talk to people and you bring them on and you bring other people in. But convening power is
Hmm.
not just getting people in the room. That's, you know, attraction power.
Right.
Convening power is when you get people who you want to be prepared to come to the room. You get to manage and work with them while they're in the room. And when they leave the room, you still have them doing things because you're leading them. And so, for example, how many times in a retail or business environment, somebody says, I want this. And I'll give you an example. Our son was about 6'3", and so we wanted a four door sedan. I need a lot of leg room in the back seat. And so I tried this car, and I kind of like a fast car. So I told the person at the Acura dealership, look, great car, not for me. I need 50 more horsepower and I need 6 inches more in the back seat. When you get
Right.
one of those, call me. It's about 1998. 6 months later, a guy named Dave Brown, the salesperson, calls me up and said, I got the car. I said, okay, I'll come by today. He joked. He said, no, no, wait a minute. I just saw the specs. It's not going to be manufactured for another year, but I'm calling you. And I said, why are you calling me? He said, they turned the engine sideways. They got 45 more horsepower and they got 5 more inches in the back seat. And I said, any other major differences? He goes, no, that's it. And I said, I'm coming over today to write you a check. How much do you need? He goes, what? I said, how much do you need? I want to put down a deposit. And so he said, just give me $1,000. I'll just hold your check and I'll tell the boss, I just sold one of those suckers. And so
Right.
we had, it was called the Acura TL, and you might hear some equipment going. That's normal, but and so I bought it 6 months before it showed up, and it was perfect. And he said, by the way, you come and you drive the vehicle for a few hours, and if you don't like it, I just give you your check back. And so that's called taking care of the customer, leading the
Hmm.
customer. And so we have to, when people walk out of your store, or if you're a golfer and you've just given them a lesson, you don't want them to walk out of your life.
Right.
You want them and you want to sign up. So here's a good example. I helped some members buy a country club that was in trouble. Okay. So what have I done? I mean, I did some legal work and maybe I get a few rounds in here or there. I'll tip everybody, but maybe I don't have to pay quite what everybody else pays. And they do that for me just because I'm a PGA member, thank goodness. But so the first thing I did was I said, so what are your goals now that you're buying this place? And he says, well, we want to be able to run an operation that can pay for itself. I said, that's not a goal. I said, because if you're at the margin every moment, like are you surviving or not, life's not good. Life's good when you know you're going to live for a long time and you know you're going to be better next week.
Right.
He said, okay, well, we need new members. I said, good. I know a golf course that's closing for 18 months, 21 months. Draft me a membership package for them. And by the way, they still have to pay some old members, some old dues. But so make it cheap. And I'll get you 100 new members. You're at 200 now. I can get you to 300 with a stroke of one pen. And now all of a sudden, you're the fastest growing country club in the United States, and you're going to advertise it. Because how many country clubs in a month or two after new ownership has 50% new members? So I can do that. Second, I said, you need some bulk sales. And they go, what's that? I said, I got two golf teams I know. They want to buy 200 rounds of golf each. So in 2 minutes, I sold 400 rounds of golf at a very discounted price. But all of a sudden now, they used to have, let's say, on average, 1,000 rounds a month on average. Well, now they're probably at 1,200. They're
Right.
20% up in rounds instantly. They've pre-sold them, but over a period of time. It's kind of a use it or lose it. I'm buying 200 rounds from September to May. If I don't use them in May, I lose it. So I now can say, it's a 8 month period, 8 months, 200 rounds, 25 rounds. I've already increased by 25 every month for the next 8 months. And and by the way, I get the money in advance for all
Right.
those rounds. That's what I get in exchange for the discount. So my cash flow is up and my number of rounds are up and almost guaranteed to be up for the next 8 months because of bulk sales.
Hmm.
And so that's important. If somebody buys a shirt from you, you know what? They're going to need clothing for the rest of their life. I want to be a place where they come and get that clothing. Equipment, same thing. How many retailers, when they sell golf equipment, call somebody up and say, hey, by the way, you really need to trade that one in. That one had three problems I didn't know about when I sold you. Or I can just say, this one's got three improvements that are going to fit your game. So stay in touch with your customers. And what I've never done, but I think is important, is when a customer walks out the door, and you do this using what's called Salesforce, you have a file on every customer and you write some notes down.
Hmm.
And so that's really important. So feel free to ask me another question. I know we've got a few minutes left, so go ahead.
It's no worries. We can go a little bit over. There's no worries there. In terms of revenue for Golf Pro Deliver, where are you guys looking to be uh, in the next 6 to 12 months in terms of growth and revenue?
So we've made the decision that we're going to concentrate on the Northeast. Like I said, we go to Waste Management, go there, but that's
Hmm.
a long drive with a big truck. And we are now the premier independent golf simulator construction company in the Northeast. The good news is the Northeast has 30 million people, 10% of the population.
Right.
I think they're more business than we can handle. And we do have sometimes a 5 month wait. So we're changing our processes. I'll give you an example. We used to go to a place and we'd measure it, and we would literally design what that simulator would look like, beautiful graphics,
Hmm.
before they ever even hired us. And I didn't know about that. And I said, wait a minute, you stop that. That's a lot of work and you might not get hired. And they said, well, how are we going to show them what it's going to look like? And I said, it's
Right.
real simple. You show them what you've done before, and then you tell them how it's going to be better and different for them. And then they
Right.
will see it in their mind's eye. And then you ask them, what more or different do you want? And then they'll tell you what they really want. Because one of the things you learn publishing books, the last thing, unless it's a great author, and I'm, big selling author, and I never was that before, but the last thing a publisher wants is for you to turn in a final manuscript. They want to know your idea. They want to
Mm.
know who's your audience. They want to know that they can somehow influence and work with you on your book. So that's a real big change. We now just show them pictures and they hire us immediately. And we save
Right.
all that time. And so we're going to continue to grow. We're not pushing our events business. We used
Okay.
to do events for the Brooklyn Nets, for at Pinehurst with John Rahm and Phil Mickelson in there. And they hired us at the last minute because they were going to get 4 inches of rain at Pinehurst they didn't expect. And so we had to come in. We fortunately made a lot of money, but it was great. And so we don't know when we're going to go back, if we're going to go back to the events business.
Mm.
And so for that reason, if we go back into the events business, we've gotten so construction heavy that we have incredible timelines and schedules and plats and everything we need to do a great job as quick as possible. Sometimes a 2 day build, sometimes a 6 day build,
Hmm.
and a lot of simulators, sometimes a 1 month build. So we're going to continue to do what we're doing well. I'm saying if we want to go back into the events business, we need a whole separate division. New
Right.
people who just come from the events world, because you know, our PGA owner, he worked at Pebble Beach and he went there to them after we were open for about 3 years, 2 years. And he said, we'd like to build some simulators for you guys out there. And they said, we don't do business with anybody. who hasn't been in business for 10 years. And so we're reaching that 10-year mark. And, somebody remembers, hey, you said you wouldn't do business with us 10 years. So we're here now. And give us your best excuse, buddy, as to why you're not going to do business with us.
Right.
And we'll take it on. The other thing that, and so, because, and why do I say we need a new division? Because when you're in the construction business, and I used to work construction, when something, you fix your mistakes before you move on. And in every construction project, there's a mistake, or somebody thinks there's a mistake that you have to explain why it's not a mistake. And so the clients are going to tug on you all the time. And even though you built it last year, we sort of have a management agreement that you pay us a little bit of money, we take care of things for a while. And so you always take care of your existing customers before you go after your new customers. If
Right.
you one person doing the same thing, so let's have two people do them, and they're not going to be tied down or constrained. So let's get a new person in, a new division in, and we start doing events again. So still a lot of proud golf more than any other sport did okay in the pandemic, but
Hmm.
indoor golf got set back by 10 years. We should be 10 years further with simulators. We should have simulators in public schools. I don't want children learning how to play dodgeball. I want children
Right.
learning how to hit golf balls and hit putts and see
Hmm.
with a cheap simulator how far it went and what it looked like on a screen. And
Hmm.
so for that reason, the reason I became a PGA pro is I just want to grow the game. That's why in 2 years I was put on the inclusion committee, a subcommittee of the PGA, and the committee called Places to Play. And I'm a nobody in golf, but the key is the PGA recognized that here's what Herb Rubenstein wants to do. He wants to make golf available for everyone in the United States.
Right.
Well, I didn't think that was something Herb Rubenstein wanted to do. I think if you're selling wallets, you want everyone to have a wallet in the United States. If you're selling
Right.
shoes, you want everyone to have shoes in the United States. And not one pair and not two pair, but 8 pair, 10 pair, 20 pair, even if I'm selling golf shoes. So that's what I want to do. I want to grow the game.
Yeah.
And that means I want to make it cheaper. Number two, I want transportation. If you don't have a car, you literally can't play golf, pretty much.
Right.
So what about public transportation? Or what about that public golf course saying you get to use our Uber account? We include it, or your Lyft account, or we even have somebody who'll come pick you up. But now that there are all these cars out there, as part of your green fee, you tell us do you need a ride back and forth to the golf course? The answer is yes. Great. Give me your address. We know instantly how much it costs. We add that to your green fee plus 20%. It's taken care of.
Hmm.
Whoever thought of that? So offer something nobody else offers, but make sure you've got a plan so you know what the revenue is and you know what the costs are. And that way, that's called listening to your customer. Do you need a
Hmm.
ride to the golf course? And if so, you become part of the public transportation system. And sort of in one other thing I just wanted to mention is um, know your competition and know where you cannot compete. We're not in the manufacturing world. We don't compete with Golf Zone. We don't compete with About Golf. We don't compete with TrackMan. We don't compete with Top Golf Tracer, but we know who they are. And they
Hmm.
always can be a vendor. We don't compete with Five Iron Golf in New York. So just know your ecosystem around you. Where do your competitors come from? Who are they? And one of my favorite books, there's two favorite books I have that I want to talk about. And if you go online, you can see a book review of the book called The Death of Competition. And Jack Nicklaus said, he said there were only about 40 golfers who ever had a chance of winning a golf tournament when he was playing. That was it. And yeah, there was the odd somebody leading after 3 rounds that never led before, and sometimes they pull it off, usually never. And one guy said, he shot like 67, and the next day he's playing in the final pairing with Tiger Woods, and he shoots
Right.
74. And somebody said, Why'd you choke? He said, I didn't choke. He said, that last round? He said, nobody watched me when I shot 67. It was like I was playing out there by myself. He said, once I'm playing the final with Tiger, it's like I was standing on the New Jersey Turnpike trying to hit chip shots with 18 wheelers going on both lanes by me at the same time.
Right.
And he said, I wasn't mentally prepared for that. He said, I actually probably played better when I shot 74. He said, because I was so nervous, and Tiger Woods was used to all of that. He owned Sunday. And so for me, this whole idea of know yourself, why are you in this business? Because customers, we in business, if there's a big failing, we focus on how. Customers buy because of a why. Why do they need that shirt? Why do they need that set of clubs? And so you need to understand, and everybody needs to know why you're in that business. You need to explain the why of every strategy that you're thinking about. You need to have a group of advisors to help you because there's no one. I mean, if you have 10 people in the room, you might have 1,400 IQ points. If there's one person in the room,
Right.
you might have 120. Who do you
Right.
want to go with? The person with
Right.
1,400 IQ points or the person with 120? And somebody said, Herb, you're a pro. Why do you still take golf lessons? I said, for the same reason Tiger did, for the same reason that everyone did. And so for me, um, you, you have to understand who is your customer. Do they already have a budget for this? Is it spontaneous buying? How do you reach them? And are you just marketing into a completely already budgeted space? Or unbudgeted, but still people buy a certain amount of clothing each year, whether they know it or not. But if you're educating your customers, that's brutal.
Hmm.
That's 10 times more expensive than marketing to existing customers. So my final term would be on the how side, have a dashboard. Something reports to you every day, every week, every month, every quarter, how you're doing.
Hmm.
In the old days, we always had that because what were our sales? You look at the receipts and how much cash do I have in the cash register and does it all match up, right?
Right. Right.
And in a grocery store, they do that, 3 times a day, sometimes with 5-hour shifts.
Right.
And the final thing is make sure you have the capital, financial resources, human resources, not to survive, not to make it to Friday, but to pay for future improvements and
Hmm.
future education and future marketing. You'll have to bootstrap it. I mean, the definition of entrepreneurship is to get something done without a lot of cash.
Hmm.
But also in entrepreneurship, you've got to have a dream. And people get on a train. They don't get on a train because of where it is. Don't tell people what you're doing. You're marketing or talking to a group of people and go to get out there and get on boards of directors of nonprofits. You want to do business with the YMCA, I'd say don't get on the board of directors of the YMCA, but get to know everybody on the board and tell them, hold a reception for them. Hey, I want the YMCA to start offering golf. And by the way, here are 24 sets of clubs. We had a golf donation drive at my club. Here's 24 sets of clubs. I'm giving them to you. You can give them to whoever you want, but I'm just reduced barrier number one. Equipment is expensive and people don't know what to buy. And there's a tag. When I give junior clubs, I use US Kids Golf Chart, and on the back, it'll say exactly how tall some kids should be to use these clubs. And
Right.
it's usually in 4 to 6 inch increments. And we just say, we hope. So every club should have golf donation drives. They should give clubs to schools. They should give clubs to the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, First Tee, um, and churches. There should be golf simulators in churches. Why is there only a basketball court and a ping pong table? There should be golf in churches and synagogues, mosques and temples. I, we all win if golf wins.
Hmm.
And so that's why I love this game. It could be made for everybody, disabled people from every race, religion, economic class, with cash, without cash. I heard in Houston that if you completed their first tee program, no matter how old you were, that's like an 18-month program, that you got free golf on Houston public golf courses. Set tee times, set tees. Somebody's got to be out, parents got to be, adults got to be out there with you. A paying adult might have to be out there with you.
Right.
But how great is that? Because every golf course has a little bit of downtime. And when that golf course is empty, or when that golf bag is in a closet, every golf bag that's sitting in a closet and not being used is a golfer waiting to get a kid or human being, adult, anybody. It's somebody waiting for you to hand on that set of golf clubs and say, here, try the game. And that's the way you want to be. Give out samples. And so a gentleman from Hawaii, a PGA member, said in 1 month, he got 10,000 unused clubs. Now, I've bought clubs for 1,000 kids. And, I got them real cheap, like $1 a club,
Hmm.
included getting the grips changed and getting them cut down. And so this guy said he had 1,000 unused clubs. And I called him up because I knew English wasn't his first language. And I said, does unused mean new? Because if you got 10,000 new clubs in 1 month, you are my hero, and I have to figure out what you just did. And he said, no, unused means they were not being used at that time. And I said, thank God. I thought I was, the dumbest guy on the block. And that's perfect because I could see somebody collecting 10,000 clubs.
Hmm.
You go to old stores and you say, if you got any inventory or demos you can't sell back, just give them to me and I promise I'll give them out. And so, by the way, you might see a little bit of shaking on my computer and everything. I'm standing on a treadmill desk, but
No
not
worries.
walking. That's how
No
I do it.
worries.
So, any other questions I might be able to answer, or anything else you want to hear about?
You know what? I think we covered a lot of things today. I was going to ask you what might be holding you back from the goals you wanted to achieve, but I think you answered that yourself by saying, you want to get back. You guys could do business in the event industry, but you needed some more team to be able to go over and do that. So I think that answers my question there. Um, I think we can wrap it up there. I really appreciate your time. I think you've shared some very valuable information to anyone who may be listening, especially myself as well. I think that's some incredible stuff, and thank you so much for being on.
Thanks. And now that you use AI, you can have this transcribed and word searched. And
That's right.
I look forward to you promoting it. And if you ever want to ever send to me how many people have seen this podcast, I would appreciate it. I don't need their
Of course.
names or anything. I'm not marketing anything, but I'm always curious to know. I've been doing
Of course.
online education for 35 years. So Thomson Reuters, one of my first clients a long time ago. Thank you very
Gotcha. Thank you, Herb.